Hey everyone, welcome to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Verbo. I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino alongside Amanda Guerra. Week 10 of the NFL is upon us. Thursday night football, kind of meh.
Went to bed. Went to bed. It was absolutely terrible, as was the weather. But look, here's the thing. Hopefully the weekend will provide a more dazzling display than what was Thursday night football. We should be. Big concerns, though, around the Bills hosting the 7-1 Vikings. And will it be Josh Allen or Case Keenum getting the start in that game? Yet to be determined there. Now, Case Keenum says he is prepared either way, telling reporters, quote, "I feel great. I'm doing the same thing I do every week. I prepare to play every week, every day, every period, every practice, every meeting. So it's the same. I just got a couple more reps going down." The Bills still the favorite to win the Super Bowl and still on top of the AFC East, sitting at 6-2, but the Jets are close behind them at 6-3, and Sunday will not be a cakewalk against the Vikings. Let's welcome in NFL insider Josina Anderson, getting us ready for Week 10 in the NFL. Some of the big storylines we're talking about here. All right, JoJo, Bills hosting the Vikings. What is the latest that you are hearing about Josh Allen? Because I don't trust anything I see on social media right now.
Well, very interesting when you're looking at Josh Allen. Obviously, this is a team that very much depends on, his skill set, but also his health. And we know that he injured his right elbow in that last series for the Bills in that 20-17 loss against the Jets. We know that he didn't practice on Wednesday and Thursday. And what was interesting when I was talking to a source this morning, what they were telling me is that Josh Allen was scheduled to practice today just to kind of see where he would be or just kind of how things are feeling. But at the same time, they also underline that might not be the case. And we know that since then, practice started at about 11:45, so a little bit more than an hour ago. And for the media portion that the reporters can see for practice, that he was not out there. So we'll check back with sources and see if that remains to be the case throughout the entirety of practice, or if there is anything that he was able to do. Obviously, it would make sense to a certain degree to test out the elbow somewhat to see where it is. So I'm sure that happened to a certain degree. But for the most part, Josh Allen has been a very steady quarterback, starting in 68 games of the 69 games that he's played in. But interestingly enough, in his rookie season in 2018, he missed 4 games for a right elbow, and that was between week 7 and week 10. So obviously he has familiarity when it comes to dealing with that pain in that specific area, and also kind of knowing where he is. But at the same time, they do have a backup in Case Keenum. And no matter what you think about Case Keenum, or what you do not know about him, he was 2-0 as a starter last year. And one of the things that were kind of stuck out in my head about him as I was thinking about him last year as a member with the Browns, we know that he won in that week 18 game against the Bengals, 21-16. But I also remember week 7 when they were playing the Broncos, and just how a lot of the players on the team were really looking forward to Case getting his opportunity that week. Won't go into any names. I'm sure you can think of some of those people who that might have been. And Case Keenum, as their leader of the team, went on to help them win that game 17-14. The next game, Baker came back. They lost against the Steelers. That was a game OBJ got 1 target and consequently ended up with the Rams. So we know what ended up there. But Case Keenum obviously has familiarity as a veteran. That's the point that I'm trying to make there. And regardless of who is starting, let's just talk about the Vikings defense and what either quarterback would potentially be going up against. Although right now it's not looking like it will be Allen. Even though we know that the Vikings are 7-1 and have the second best record behind the Eagles, they are 27th at the pass defense, 27th in completion percentage allowed, and they are last in the NFL when it comes to red zone defense. And just looking at the last 4 games, and some of the teams that they've struggled with. They've struggled against teams when it comes to the pass defense, rather, when they faced up against really potent wide receivers. So guys like Ty Hill was able to get 12 receptions for 177, Waddle 6 for 129, D Hop 12 for 159, and AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert also did fairly well as a committee of wide receivers against them. So something to think about when Stephon Diggs is going up against his old team, no matter who the passer is. But either way, we'll keep our eye on what the official report is on paper, but we'll also talk to sources behind the scenes, no matter what Sean McDermott says, and really find out what the deal is relative to how much he was able to test that elbow or not.
Josina, with what we saw, let's talk about the Bucs right now. Obviously, Thursday Night Football, the way the Falcons look, they should should be feeling pretty comfortable right now when it comes to the NFC South. They are in Munich this week to take on the Seahawks. That's not going to be an easy game. But when it comes to Tom Brady and this Bucs team, look, we saw a bounce back game, if you will, against the Rams. You saw Brady do what he does best, which is not get down in those situations, come away with the win. And from what you're hearing, I understand they like at least being in Munich for this game and getting Tom Brady out of the country.
Yeah, I talked to a source about it this morning, and one of the things that they said to me is that this is a good time for Tom Brady to be abroad and really get away from everything that reminds him of his personal circumstance here domestically, and just to get away. And more than that, really follow up on the momentum from their 16-13 victory over the Rams. The other thing that the source said to me is that, there have been obviously a lot of conversations between coach and the quarterback since they've been going through this adversity. If you think back to their loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers 4 games ago, when Tom Brady, someone is calling here, was out of town and went to the wedding of Bob Kraft, and then consequently they lost that game. Obviously, we saw how they had their most recent loss against Baltimore, which was just, to be quite blunt, an ugly loss. A lot of people talking about Brady, wondering, what's going on with him. Is he really at the lowest point of his career? And then the next day, we all found out that his divorce was official. And it just made him more human and made people realize, even though we knew he was going through struggles personally, it just kind of crystallized that. So that was one of the things that somebody said to me relative to it being a good time for Tom Brady to gain perspective. And even though they also remarked that, at times, Tom Brady hasn't been as accurate and struggling on long balls, particularly on passes that are over 20 yards right now, ranking 20th, completing 34% of those. And his yards per attempt right now at 6.4, ranking 29th at 6.4 yards per attempt. He's also been dealing with drops from his wide receivers. They have 10 amongst that group right now, which is the second most in the league. So just a lot of things to try to get back on page with. But it was very good to see Tom Brady and his offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, embrace on the sidelines after that win against the Rams. And it'll be really interesting to see if they can continue that, no less against the very red hot Seahawks quarterback by Geno Smith.
Josina, you mentioned Tom Brady looking like a human. It is rare that we see that from him. And if anybody has the mental toughness to get through this, it is one Tom Brady there. Let's talk about the Cowboys in Green Bay this week and the return of Mike McCarthy to Lambeau. But the biggest chatter around this Dallas team besides this game has to do with OBJ. You get guys like Dak, you got guys like CeeDee Lamb telling reporters we'd be crazy not to want him here. What's the latest when it comes to OBJ potentially going to the Cowboys?
Well, from a Dallas Cowboys perspective, every time that I've checked in with the team, what has been underlined to me is that nothing has been imminent. And right now we're waiting on just official word for whether Odell is even cleared. Obviously, there was a report about that earlier this week, and we still yet to receive official word. And we know that we've been hearing from a number of players on the team, whether it be Dak Prescott or Ezekiel Elliott or whoever has been speaking out, just to, encourage and let Odell know that he is welcome on the team and that they would love to have him on a team, and add to guys like CeeDee Lamb right now, who have 556 receiving yards, Noah Brown, 339, and what have you. So obviously, and namely Jerry Jones, who's been winking his eye and, flirting with the idea of Odell coming to the team in the press. But I think the other thing that just kind of stands out to me is, just from all of the conversations that I've had, is that this is really Odell's timing, and this is really Odell's, choice with what he feels like is best for him. And, I don't get the sense that there's any rush right now with respect to that. It'll all come together when he feels it is best. I also get the sense that, right now the best thing is to give him the space and give him the time to determine what's best for him medically, but also spiritually when he feels like it best aligns for him so he can make the best decision for himself. So that's kind of the tone that I get from it right now. If you're taking my vibes from it, I think it's a good time to kind of just let it be right now.
Josina, this week you had a chance to talk one-on-one to Robert Sala. The Jets are on a bye this week. A very surprising team and how well they have done this season. 6-3 in the AFC East, just sitting behind the Bills there. Of course, there's been a lot of chatter around Zach Wilson. Some of it not so great. He has the backup from his head coach there in Robert Sala. You spoke with him about a plethora of things. From everything you talked about, what was one of the biggest things that stood out to you?
Well, when I put it in the context of all the news going on with the coaches right now in the NFL, as we begin to approach the coaching carousel, and what just happened in Indianapolis relative to Jim Irsay making the decision to hire former player Jeff Saturday as the interim head coach, and the debate around that and how appropriate that was relative to his experience and what qualifies as, a good coach rather when it comes to making him the head of your organization. And then also thinking back to a defensive coordinator calling me a couple of days ago, and in his mind telling me that he feels like the notion around head coaches and what they represent for a team is changing, meaning that he feels like it's shifting more towards just being more of a general for the team, more of a corporal for the team, and being a face for the team. And in certain examples, in certain instances, obviously not everybody. But to answer your question, and why I bring that up, is because what stands out to me in my conversation with Robert Sala is not only his leadership and his obvious intellect when it comes to football and X's and O's, but even more so, his emotional intelligence. And when you really listen to him break down aspects and points of adversity through the Jet season, whether it be after the first game and he made that no receipts comment and the New York media was really starting to lather on him, and they just pulled it out at the end of that game against the Browns in week 2 when there was a collapse, and obviously went on this momentum that they have right now and being 6-3, but also in how he's dealt with players like Elijah Moore, who requested a trade, and really managing that aspect. And then also a player like Denzel Mims, who was a healthy scratch for 6 games, and dealing with that situation. And one of the things that he said in my interview with him was that, he really tries to get to the players to not focus on things that they can't control. Because if you focus on things that you can't control, it inevitably becomes negative, and that negativity ends up turning right back on you, and then that seeps into everything else. And he was obviously even more eloquent on a lot of different things relative to how he's managed that. But I think that's a key thing, because it's not really something that you can measure on a stat page. It's not really something that you can measure in the wins and loss column. His ability as a head coach, as a man, to relate to the players on his team, to manage it, and then obviously to move from, what was pessimistic and into the success that they're having right now into the bye, is what really stands out to me. I can sense that when I'm talking to him, I can hear it in the words that he chose in our 30-minute interview. And I think that's kind of what's resonating when people are looking at the interview right now online.
Yeah, and we do want to mention you can find that entire interview on YouTube as well as other social media pages. Josina, full 30-minute interview, one-on-one there with Robert Sala. So much to talk about when it comes to this Jets team, and it's all there. Josina, you're somewhat on a bye this week, but you're always working. Thank you for your time. Sunday games you can check out on CBS. Of course, the Colts with their new head coach, Jeff Saturday, taking on the Raiders. We're going to see what happens there. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.